Hello and welcome back to Geotech Masters. In our last video, we learned the basic language of soil, defining terms like gravel and sand. Today we are going to learn how to look at these soils with a geotechnical eye. We will zoom in and describe the individual particles. Mastering these skills is very important. These observations are universal. They are the same no matter which classification system you use, whether it is ASTM D2488 or AS1726. Let's begin to train your geotechnical eye.
In this video, we will answer several important questions. How do we describe the shape and sharpness of a single grain of sand? What can the hardness of a gravel particle tell us about its origin? And how do we properly describe the range of sizes within a single soil sample? These are the essential descriptive skills that every geotechnical professional must know. In this video, we are focusing only on coarse-grained soils. Remember from our last lesson, these are soils where you can see the individual particles. We are talking about sand, gravel, cobbles, and boulders. We are not yet discussing the fine-grained soils like silt and clay. We are learning the skills of description. This is the first step before we get to classification. Think of yourself as a detective. Before you can solve the case, you must first observe all the clues. The properties of each particle are important clues that tell us a story about the soil. Each characteristic we will discuss today tells us something about the soil's history. Has it traveled a long distance in a river? Did it come from a very hard parent rock? By describing these features carefully, we can begin to understand the soil's story and predict its engineering behavior.